My parents gave my sister a fully paid university education, a down payment on a condo in the Glebe, and a standing ovation in our living room, all in the same house where, on the night of her latest promotion, I sat in the third row of folding chairs and watched my father forget to introduce me to his business partners, not once. In 2 hours of speeches and champagne and my mother's canapes arranged on the good china, my name came up exactly once, when my aunt leaned over and asked my father's colleague if I was the one who does the trades. The one who does the trades. I counted how many times my sister's name was spoken that evening. 31. 31 mentions of Vivienne, 31 chances for the room to nod and smile and raise their glasses to the woman who had done everything the family had mapped out for her, who had arrived at every destination they'd planned, who had never once made my mother lower her voice on the phone or my father change the subject at dinner. I counted because counting gave me something to do while the room moved around me the way rooms move when you're a piece of furniture nobody notices. It was a Saturday in April, Vivienne's promotion party. My parents split level in Canada on Bridgestone Crescent, the same house where I'd failed grade 9 science, the same kitchen table where my father once explained, with the patience of a man who'd stopped expecting results, that university was probably not in the cards for me. 40 people filled the house that night, my parents' friends, Vivienne's colleagues from the tech firm downtown, aunts and uncles in from Gatineau. My mother had made her spinach dip. My father had opened the Ontarian White he saved for occasions when impressing people mattered. The whole evening felt staged, the way family gatherings do when they're really performances for an audience whose opinions you've decided matter more than the truth. Vivienne stood near the fireplace most of the night, 35 years old, 3 years younger than me, with the ease of someone who's spent a decade in rooms where everyone already knows her name. She'd just been named Vice President of Technology Operations at Northgate Systems, a mid-sized enterprise software company based in Ottawa, salary north of $200,000, company car. The exact title my parents had been quietly building toward in their minds since she graduated from Carleton, with a computer science degree they'd co-signed a line of credit to fund. At one point my father stood and tapped his glass the way fathers do when they've prepared remarks. Vivienne has always known what she wanted, he said, and she's always had the discipline to go after it. I'm not surprised she got this, I'm proud. Your mother's proud, we always knew this was coming. The room murmured its agreement, the way rooms do for the man who bought the wine. My mother was already crying. I looked at my hands. I'd driven up from Hamilton for this, 3 hours on the 401, early enough to help my mother move furniture, late enough that I'd already missed the window where my presence might have mattered. I'd brought a card and a bottle of rye from a distillery near my office. I'd shaken my sister's hand and told her congratulations and meant it, genuinely, without the bitterness people probably expected. Then I'd found a chair in the third row and sat down. Nobody had assigned me that seat, but the third row was where I always ended up in rooms like this, behind the toasts, behind the son who'd figured it out, behind the daughter who'd figured it out even better. I am the one who does the trades. Before I tell you what happened when my business partner, Petra, walked through my parents' front door uninvited that night, before I tell you what she said to my father and what the room did when she said it, I need to tell you what the trades actually meant. What it meant to a 14-year-old who was handed that phrase like a verdict, who carried it for 24 years, and what he built while everyone else was looking the other way. My name is Darin Leclerc, born in 1986 in Ottawa, the first child of Hugh and Marguerite Leclerc. My father spent 30 years as a project manager at a federal contractor. My mother taught French at a Catholic elementary school until she retired. They were practical people, organized people, people who believed in credentials and stability, and the particular safety of knowing your children had a plan. For a few years I was the plan, the first grandchild on both sides, the one who'd go to university, wear a collared shirt to work, have a pension and a driveway and somewhere to arrive by 30. Then Vivienne was born in 1989, and by grade 5 I'd started falling apart in school. Not dramatically, the way a foundation cracks slowly from the inside before anyone notices the walls leaning. I couldn't sit still, I lost assignments. I started projects and abandoned them halfway through, not because I didn't care, but because my brain would hit the midpoint of something and simply move on, pulled toward whatever was louder or more urgent than the worksheet due Friday. My teachers called it laziness, my parents called it attitude. The school called my mother in twice in one semester. At 14, after a brutal parent-teacher conference, they took me to a psychologist in Nepean. 3 sessions later, ADHD, the kind without visible hyperactivity, the kind that looks like coasting when you're actually drowning. My mother took careful notes, accommodations, strategies, medication options. My father asked on the drive home, "Does this mean he can't do university?" "It means he learns differently, Hugh." I'm asking practically, what does this mean for his plan? It means the plan might need to change. He didn't say another word the whole drive. I sat in the back seat, watching the houses go by on the Queensway, understanding, the way kids understand things before they have words for them, that something had just been decided without me. The help came, a tutor on Tuesday evenings, a note-taker at school, a bottle of Ritalin that made my own life feel like something I watched through a dirty window, but the framing had already shifted. I was the one with the problem now, and Vivian, 11 years old, reading 3 grade levels ahead, color-coding her binder tabs, provided the contrast that turned the shift into policy. Vivian got encouraged. I got accommodated. Her university savings account got a deposit every year. I got told, at the end of grade 11, by my father at the kitchen table with his coffee and the directness of a man who'd thought about something long enough to stop thinking and start saying it. Darin, I think you should look at the skilled trades, electrician maybe, or HVAC. Solid work, good pay, nobody's automating a journeyman, will support you through the apprenticeship. And university? He looked at his coffee. I don't think that's the right path for you. What if I want to try? Then try, but we can't fund a path we don't think is going to work out. Vivian's RESP sat at $42,000 when I graduated high school. I know because I saw the statement once, on the counter by the microwave, home for Christmas in 2003. In 2005, I got into the electrical apprenticeship program through Algonquin College. I paid for it myself, a summer job at Arona in Nepean and $3,000 in an envelope from my Aunt Brigitte, who said she didn't think it was fair and that she believed in me. I kept that card for 12 years. The apprenticeship ran 5 years, 4 of them on commercial job sites across the Ottawa Valley under working journeymen. In the 5th, I passed my certificate exam on the first try. And something happened on those job sites that had never happened to me in a classroom or at a dinner table or in any room my family had ever put me in. I understood it. Not the exam material, I still read each line 6 times before it sat still enough to remember. The systems themselves, how current moved through a building. The logic of power distributed across floors and panels and circuits, why certain loads needed dedicated runs, why you planned a commercial electrical system the way you'd plan a route. From source to destination, the most efficient path, enough capacity for what it actually had to carry. ADHD had made me terrible at sitting still, but it had given me something else. A brain that could hold several systems in the air at once, that could walk through a building that didn't exist yet and see the wiring as a map, a network, a problem that wanted to be solved spatially instead of read off a page. My site supervisor, a guy named Ted Koopman who'd been wiring commercial buildings in eastern Ontario since the 80s, noticed it before I did. You see the whole picture before you start, he said once, watching me work through a panel load calculation that had the rest of the crew stuck. As most guys see one circuit, you see the building. I just think that way. I know, that's what I'm telling you. Ted taught me that the trades weren't a consolation prize. They were a different intelligence entirely, one the people handing out university brochures had never learned to measure. He'd started with 1 van and a license in 1984. By the time I met him, he owned Koopman Integrated, a 16-person commercial and industrial electrical firm, and he was 59 and thinking about what came next. In 2013, at 27, I told him I wanted to start my own shop. He looked at me a while, then said, "I'll give you a list of contacts and a letter of reference. The contacts are worth more than the money. Don't waste them." He also wrote me a check for $20,000. No contract, no interest. Pay me back when the company's real. If it's never real, we'll call it a lesson. I registered Arcline Electrical and Building Technologies in Hamilton in 2014. Hamilton because Ottawa already had Ted's reputation stamped on it and because it sat between 2 of the fastest-growing industrial corridors in Ontario. First year, 2 contracts, 1 part-time hire, revenue just under $90,000. By 2017, a team of 12, revenue at $1.4 million. In 2019, I brought on Petra Holt as operations director, 33, a former project manager at a big Toronto M&E firm, smarter than her old employers had wanted her to be, and done being managed by people who couldn't keep up. She took one look at how I was running things and told me I had a real company being held back by a founder still running it like a one-man operation. She was right. I handed her operations and focused on the thing I'd always been able to do. Look at a problem from 30,000 feet and see where the solution was before anyone else finished reading the brief. By 2021, 41 licensed electricians, 3 specialized crews for data center and critical systems infrastructure, revenue at $8.2 million. By 2024, 73 employees across 2 offices, Hamilton and Mississauga, revenue at $21 million, and a company valuation conservatively assessed that fall by a Toronto accounting firm of roughly $38 million. I was 38 years old. I owned a company that most people in the industry knew and that my own parents had never once asked me about, not in the way you ask about something when you actually want the answer. In 2022, Arclean won a vendor contract with Northgate Systems, my sister's company, to modernize the electrical and network infrastructure across their 3 Ontario offices. The work was managed entirely through Northgate's facilities team. Vivian in the software division had no overlap with it at all. We came in on time and under budget, and Northgate signed us as their preferred electrical vendor for the region. By 2024, they'd paid Arclean $4.2 million across 3 contracts. My sister that April was the newly appointed Vice President of Technology Operations at the company that had been paying mine for 3 years running. I found out about the account 6 weeks after it was signed when my accounts team flagged it in a quarterly review. I pulled the file, saw the Ottawa address, sat at my desk for a long moment, and closed it. I didn't cancel the contract. I didn't call Vivian. I didn't call my parents to say, by the way, the company that keeps your daughter's office running is the one her brother built. I let it ride because the work was legitimate and excellent, and because the irony of it didn't need an audience to be real. Petra found out 8 months later. Your sister's company is one of our largest Ontario clients. Yes. She doesn't know you own Arclean. We don't talk about work much. Darin, they've paid us over $2 million. 4.2, 3 contracts. She stared at me, and you haven't said anything. What would I say? That you're the reason her company's offices have functioning infrastructure. I don't need her to know that. Maybe not, but your father should. I told her to leave it. She did for 2 years. Petra respects people's choices right up until the moment she decides she doesn't. Which brings me back to that Saturday in April, to the folding chair in the 3rd row. To 9:15 in the evening, when the front door opened and Petra walked in wearing the gray blazer she keeps for client meetings and found me exactly where she expected to. She crouched beside my chair, Darin. How did you know where they lived? Your assistant, don't be angry at her. I was persuasive. She looked at me straight. I need you to listen to what I'm about to say. Petra, you've been sitting in the back of your own family's celebration for 3 hours. Your father gave a speech about your sister and never said your name. Your mother introduced you to someone 20 minutes ago as Vivian's brother, not as your own person. And I've watched you absorb that for 7 years without a word. Tonight I'm saying something. She stood before I could stop her. The room was still circling Vivian near the fireplace. My father stood with his wine, talking to one of her Northgate colleagues. My mother was in the kitchen, reloading the canapé tray with the focused energy of a woman who processes hard feelings by making sure nobody runs out of food. Petra walked straight up to my father and put out her hand. Mr. Leclerc? Petra Holt, Director of Operations at Arclean Electrical and Building Technologies. I apologize for arriving uninvited. I thought you should know who owns the company. He shook her hand, his face registering something, not recognition of her, but of the name. Arclein, the electrical firm? That's right. We've had your crew in our offices. Good work, fast professional. Are you here for the firm? In a sense. She turned and looked across the room at me in the suit I'd driven 3 hours in from Hamilton in the 3rd row. She pointed. Arclean was founded and is solely owned by your son, Darin Leclerc. What followed wasn't loud, it was the opposite. The specific sense of 40 people stopping at once, conversations abandoned mid-sentence, wine glasses paused halfway to mouths. My father looked at Petra, then at me, then back at her. I'm sorry? Founded in 2014 with a single license and 1 part-time employee. 2 offices now, 73 licensed tradespeople and project staff, $21 million in annual revenue, assessed valuation around $38 million. She paused. And the company that's managed all electrical and data infrastructure for Northgate's Ontario offices for the past 3 years, the one your daughter's employer has paid $4.2 million, is the one your son built from a $20,000 loan and a journeyman's certificate. Every face in the room turned to me. My mother appeared from the kitchen, still holding the tray, one hand rising slowly to her mouth. My Aunt Brigitte near the hallway was already crying. She's the type, and I love her for it. Vivian stood beside my father, and her expression wasn't the cool, analytical one she wears in meetings when she needs a beat to process. She looked younger, like someone just handed a map of a city she thought she knew, realizing the street she grew up on isn't where she thought. My father's face was doing something I had never seen it do in 38 years. The composure was cracking. Hugh Leclerc had managed federal contractors for 3 decades. He was not a man who lost his expression in a room full of people, but something older than anger was surfacing under the control as it slipped. Darin, his voice came out quiet, too quiet for the room. Is this true? I stood for the first time all night and walked from the back of the room to the front, past the Northgate colleagues who didn't know me, past the aunts and uncles who'd watched me grow up and believed the story about me as completely as everyone else had. I stopped 3 feet from my father, which was about 24 years less than the actual distance between us. Yes, I said, it's true. You own Arkline. Founded it, built it, own it outright. And Northgate has been paying my company for 3 years, before Vivian's promotion and after. She signed the contract renewal herself last November. She's about to remember that. I looked at my sister. Her eyes were closed, not in grief, but in the particular recognition of someone pulling up a memory and finding it exactly where they didn't want it to be. The vendor approval, she said quietly. Last fall, I signed off on the preferred vendor list during the operational transition before the announcement. Arkline's on that list. She opened her eyes. I didn't know it was yours. You never asked what I do for a living. That's not. I know you're an electrician. I was an electrician, now I run a company. 10 years. We did your offices in Canada, Mississauga, Toronto. The crew that rewired your server room 2 years ago, mine. The panel upgrade your facilities manager called the cleanest commercial installation they'd seen in 15 years, my apprentices. While you were being promoted to VP of Technology Operations, your technology operations were being kept running by the brother the family told to go learn a trade. Vivian closed her eyes again. I turned to my father. You sat at that kitchen table when I was 17 and told me university wasn't the right path. You didn't say it cruelly. You said it the way people say things they've already decided, being kind enough to let the other person know, and I understood what you really meant. The investment was already spoken for. Vivian's resp, Vivian's future, Vivian's credentials. I was the other one, the one who needed to be pointed somewhere manageable. He said nothing. I'm not telling you this to say it hurt me, Dad. You already know it did, and telling you was never the point. The point is what I did with it. I took the $20,000 Ted Koopman lent me. I glanced at Brigitte, who pressed her hands together and nodded, thinking I meant her gift, and I built something, not to prove you wrong, not to make a scene at a party you weren't expecting one at. I built it because after that conversation at the table, I decided to build a life that didn't need your blueprint, that didn't need your savings account, your contacts, or your idea of what was worth investing in. My mother had set the tray down somewhere without my noticing. It sat tilted on the side table by the door, a few canapés sliding together. The company that wires your daughter's offices, the one her colleagues call one of the most reliable vendors they've worked with. The company that's quietly kept this family's professional world running for 3 years without anyone in this room knowing it was mine. That's the company built by the kid you pointed toward the trades. And I'll be honest, the trades were the best thing that ever happened to me. I just needed someone to see that as a gift instead of a redirect. His face was open in a way I had no frame for. Hugh Leclerc prided himself on reading a room and responding correctly. 30 years of boardrooms and budget meetings had made sure of that. He was not, as a rule, caught without the right response. He was caught. 38 million, he said softly. Give or take, as of last fall, the valuation firm expects it higher this year. And you've been running this for 10 years. Since 2014. He set his glass down on the mantel. He didn't look at Vivian, just at me. Why didn't you tell us? I'd expected the question. Petra had asked it, and Ted and everyone who knew the whole picture and couldn't understand the silence. Because you never asked, I said. Not once in 20 years did you call and say, Darin, how's the work going? What are you building? What do you need? You called to check in. You forwarded articles about the housing market. You told me about Vivian's promotions. You never asked about mine because in the picture this family had of me, I wasn't going anywhere. I was the trades. I was the accommodation. Asking about my plans would have meant admitting I had them. The room was very quiet. I built a team from nothing. I hired people better than me in every domain that matters and gave them room to be better, because that's what a company actually is, not a credential, not a title, a structure that lets people do good work. I built it without a cent from you, without a contact, without a single door opened by the Leclerc name or the pathways Vivian had and I didn't. I built it with a journeyman's ticket and a contact list from a 60-year-old electrician in Kemptville who saw something in me that you never looked for. I looked at my mother. Marguerite Leclerc stood by the kitchen door, not crying, something harder than crying, a clear, undefended attention she had never, in my memory, turned on me for this long. Mom, when Vivian got into Carleton, you called to tell me before you told her, because you were happy and I was the person you thought of first. Do you remember? She nodded. I was 19 on my first job site. You called at 7 in the morning, so happy, and then you said, I hope you find something that makes you that happy too. You meant it kindly. But what I heard was that my happiness was still undetermined, still out there, waiting to be found while Vivian's was already secured. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. I found it, Mom. 8 years ago, driving a van with two guys out to a commercial build in Stony Creek, managing the whole installation, watching it come out exactly right. I find it every morning I walk a job site and see my crews working and know I built this. It didn't come in a picture frame with a university crest on it, but I found it. She made a sound, not a word, just the sound of someone absorbing something they have no defense against. Last, I turned to Vivienne, who was looking at me the way people look when the geometry of something they thought they understood has just shifted underneath them. I didn't know, she said. I genuinely didn't know, Darin. I know you didn't. I should have. We've talked about your work. I knew you had a company. You knew I had a little electrical business. You said that once at Christmas and I didn't correct you. I should have. But correcting you would have meant being defensive about what I do, and I decided a long time ago I was done with that. She flinched. It's not a little electrical business, it's 73 people. Right now, it's the largest commercial electrical infrastructure upgrade in the Mississauga corridor in 5 years. It's the company that keeps your offices running. And the reason you didn't know any of that is the same reason I was sitting in the third row tonight. Nobody in this family has ever looked at me and wondered what Darin's building. That's not a complaint, it's just a fact. Tonight it stopped being a private one. She looked at the floor, then back at me and said something I didn't expect. Can I come see it? See what? The company, the offices, the job sites. I want to see what you built. She wasn't performing. Vivienne doesn't perform. The framework she'd been handed her whole life had just revealed itself as incomplete, and her instinct in the face of an incomplete framework was always to go gather more data. Yeah, I said, come to Hamilton, I'll give you the tour. Okay. Wear practical shoes, job sites don't care about your title. She almost smiled. I've got steel toes from a site visit last year. First pair? Third, actually, a pause. I visit sites all the time. That surprised me, and I didn't hide it. There's a lot you don't know about me either, she said quietly. We've both been working in the same gap. She was right. I hadn't expected that, but she was right. 4 months have passed. It's August now, and Hamilton is hot the way Hamilton gets in August, heavy, flat concrete still holding yesterday's heat. My crews are midway through a data center retrofit in Burlington that'll add close to $3 million to this year's revenue, the kind of job where every decision touches 15 others, and you have to hold the whole picture while you make each one. Petra told me she was out of line, showing up at my parents' party uninvited. I told her I knew and that I was giving her a bonus. She said the bonus was insufficient. I said it was $17,000. She said that was sufficient. Vivienne came to Hamilton 6 weeks after the party. She walked the main floor of the Arcline offices, the project coordination room with site maps pinned to the wall, the staging area where apprentices were prepping cable runs for Burlington, looking at all of it with the eyes of someone who manages technology operations for a living, someone who actually understands infrastructure. You run lean, she said. We have to. We're not a big firm. We win work on precision, not fleet size. How many projects are you running concurrently? 14 active, 4 in tender. She nodded slowly, taking it in. Dad doesn't understand this, does he? He thinks trades means one man and a van. Most people his generation do. He's been quiet since April, barely talks at Sunday dinner. Mom says he's taking long walks in the evenings. I'm not responsible for his processing. No, I know, I just thought you should know it's happening. She stopped in front of the project board, 14 job names, each with a crew lead, a timeline, a milestone column, and looked at it a long moment. Darin, I need to say something, and I want to say it without you deflecting. Okay. I took you for granted. Not because I didn't care, but because the story the family told was comfortable and I never questioned it. I went to university, you went to the trades, and somewhere in my head that became, I'm the one who succeeded and Darin's the one who's fine. I never interrogated that because interrogating it meant looking at whether it was true, and looking at whether it was true meant looking at what this family actually did. I didn't want to look, so I didn't. She turned to face me directly. I'm not done. I signed the Arcline renewal in November without knowing it was yours. But I reviewed the work history first. It was genuinely excellent. Our facilities team said the 3 vendors before Arcline never came close. I renewed it because the work earned it, not because of family. I'd have signed it either way. That mattered more than I expected. I know, I said. That's why I didn't cancel it when I found out you were there. She laughed, one short breath, then a real one. First time I'd heard my sister laugh at something I'd said in longer than I could remember, in a way that didn't feel polite. My mother called the week after the party. I let it go twice, honestly. The third time I answered. Darin. Mom. I've been thinking about what to say for 5 days, and I still don't have it right, so I'm going to say the wrong version and ask you to forgive the imprecision. I almost smiled. She's a French teacher. Imperation is always on her mind. Okay. We failed you, not just your father, me. I knew the ADHD diagnosis was being used as a reason to stop investing in you rather than invest differently, and I told myself I was picking my battles, when really I was just choosing the easier child. Vivian was easier to believe in because her intelligence looked like the kind we'd been taught to recognize. Yours didn't fit the template. Instead of questioning the template, I bent you to fit it, and when you wouldn't bend, I looked the other way. I was at my office window watching 3 Arclean vans get prepped for the morning run. I hear you, Mom. Do you forgive me? I'm working on it, that's the honest answer. That's a fair one. It's going to take time. I have time, and Darin, the card Bridget gave you, the $3,000. What about it? It was my money. I gave it to her to give to you because I didn't want your father to know, and because I didn't know how to give it to you myself without admitting I thought he was wrong. I'm telling you now because you deserve to know. I didn't speak for a moment. Why now? Because you stood in our living room in April and told the truth. It would be wrong for me to stay a coward about my own. My father hasn't called. I haven't waited for him to. Hugh Leclerc is 67 and he's been right about most things he's believed in his life. Finding out he was wrong about his own son for 24 years isn't the kind of thing a man built like that processes quickly. He'll come around or he won't. Either way, I have a company to run and a Burlington data center that needs finishing by the end of October. Ted Koopman drove up from Kemptville last month, 69 now, retired, driving the same truck he had when I was 22. He walked through my Hamilton office with the quiet of a man who's built things and knows what built things look like from the inside. You paid me back, he said. 2018, with interest. I said no interest. I paid it anyway. He put a hand on my shoulder, looking at the project board, the crew schedules, the stack of tender documents. Your father's wrong about you, he said. Was always wrong. But you know that. I do. Then stop carrying it. It's extra weight on a job that doesn't need it. My partner Renata said much the same thing that night at our kitchen table in Dundas, the house I chose because it's 8 minutes from the office and has a garage big enough for a work van. She'd been listening to me talk about the party and the silence longer than she probably wanted to. How do you feel about all of it now? Complicated. The family stuff or that it's public now? Both. Do you regret Petra doing it? I actually thought about that one. No, I think I was ready and didn't know it. She knew before I did. Very healthy of you. Don't make it weird. She laughed. Your sister wants a real relationship. Your mom wants to apologize properly. Your dad's going on evening walks to avoid processing his feelings. Classic. And you want to finish the Burlington job on time and stop being asked about your emotions. Accurately stated. So finish the job, let the rest move at its own pace. You've held this alone for 10 years, you can afford to let people catch up. She's usually right, and I've learned not to argue with, right when I'm lucky enough to live with it. It's 5:30 in the morning. I'm standing in the parking lot of the R. Klein office in Hamilton, the same lot I've pulled into since 2016, drinking coffee from the travel mug I've had since 2019 because it's never once leaked and I see no reason to replace things that work. The Burlington crew is loading the last of the cable management gear. Kwame, the site super, the best systems thinker I've ever hired, is running the morning brief with the apprentices. 73 employees, 2 offices, $21 million in annual revenue, $38 million in assessed value, built by a man whose family pointed him toward the trades because they'd run out of other ideas for him. My father called it a redirect once, a practical accommodation, said with the kindness of a man who'd already accepted a lesser outcome for his son. But here's what he never understood about the trades, and what I've spent 20 years learning from the inside. The trades are where the world actually works. Behind every office tower Vivian's colleagues walk into each morning, behind every server room running Northgate's software, behind the panel box nobody thinks about until the lights go out, someone who thought in systems and ran the wire and made the connection that made the whole thing function. The trades aren't the consolation, they're the foundation. They told me to learn a trade and thought they were putting a ceiling on me. They were handing me the wall. I built a company on it that their whole world quietly depends on, and the only thing I regret is that it took 24 years and 1 uninvited guest at a party for anyone in my family to look at it directly and see it for what it was. If you were ever the one they redirected, the one who didn't fit the template they'd already paid for, whose intelligence didn't come with a frame on the wall, who was told to be practical when what you needed was to be believed, tell me what you built anyway. I read everyone. And if any part of this reached the version of you that was handed a lesser plan and decided to build your own instead, pass it along to someone who needs it, especially whoever's sitting in the third row right now, still waiting for the room to look at them. The room will look or it won't. You don't need it to. Build the thing. Eventually, the room has to live in what you build.